Right, let's move to Unit 2. The second unit is called the Management of Educational Change. As I was explaining earlier, the reason behind us studying all those contemporary issues, covering different pieces of theory and understanding how they are impacting the creation of policies, the implementation of policies, and the experience of the students, but also how education is conducted and delivered, that is all preparing you to learn how to manage educational change. Because given what we are currently experiencing, not only politically but also as a society, again because of the impact of the pandemic, educational change is pretty much a constant. And the aim of this unit is to help you understand ways in which educational leadership and management can provide support during the process of change, developing leadership in your own educational context. So here you are going to be thinking of yourselves not only as practitioners and education managers, but also as change leaders. This is why there will be three key models of change management that you are going to learn as part of Unit 2. We are going to discuss more models, but these three models are some of the most essential models that we could not only learn the theory behind, but we can think about how we could implement those if we are involved in the process of managing change. And in a moment, I'm going to give you an example of one of the models and how that could work in an educational change management initiative. So for the purpose of understanding how to manage change, we are going to focus on McKinsey's 7S model, Kotter's theory, and Lewin's change model. You may already be familiar with these. However, again, level 6 does not cover change management in detail. So if you have just completed level 6 and you are transitioning to this level, to level 7, here you are going to learn about how to manage change in a much greater detail. Okay, so these are some of the these are three of the models that we are going to cover. So let's have a look at Lewin's change model in more detail. So this model allows you to actually put theory into practice in a very sequential manner. As you could see here, change is presented as a three-stage process. The very first stage is the stage of unfreezing. What Lewin means by unfreezing is, first of all, recognizing the need for change and establishing what needs to change, ensuring that change is something that is necessary, but also understanding how it can be implemented. So this is the very first stage, identifying, yes, this area needs to be changed, or there is something that is happening in the external environment which requires us to change the way we do things. So we have to, metaphorically said, unfreeze our way of dealing with things so that we could respond to what is happening in the external environment, or even if it's not related to the external environment, we could respond to whatever needs to be improved and focus on driving change internally, as change could result as driving change could result as an external condition where something has, for instance, occurred. Again, giving you an example with the pandemic, where certain policies needs to be changed as a response to government legislation, or change could occur as a result of identifying a gap in service delivery, identifying a gap in quality, and wanting to implement improvements. Remember the gap model that I mentioned earlier? That could very much relate to Lewin's change model, and we are going to study that relationship during level 7. So the second stage here is the actual change stage, where the changes that have been planned are implemented. This is where everyone is onboarded and employees themselves are introduced to whatever however change is going to look like, whatever initiatives are being put in place, and they are also part of the process. So as education managers, this is where you step up as leaders. This is where you implement the new changes, the new culture. This is a stage where change is championed by you as well, especially as education providers. And then the very final stage is the referee stage, where changes are already reinforced and stabilized. And here you also plays a really key role, because implementing change and actually successfully completing the change cycle, where you could see that attitudes have changed, if you are working towards impacting, let's say, the culture, attitudes towards learning, or behaviors even, you are closely monitoring how these are changing, and then you are taking active part as leaders in championing that change. Okay, so now we are actually going to look at some steps that could give you a bit of a practical idea of how change is implemented, how to actually instigate change and improvement in an educational organization, just so that you can understand how this model is put into practice. Again, this is just an overview session, and during the sessions that are part of this unit, we are going to go into a much greater depth as to how you can actually do this, so that we could fully support you in learning how to manage change. So one thing that you're going to learn at this level is how to develop a plan for change. This is a practical element of change management, where you are not only going to learn how to collect feedback and identify areas where change needs to be implemented, but you also learn how to physically develop a plan based on the findings that you have collected. And also, quite importantly, identifying the outcome of the change management initiative as well. You will also be looking at the potential impact of change and really adopting an analytical mindset here, and explaining how, especially when you're proposing change to senior stakeholders, so that this could be approved and the project could go ahead. It is important to always identify the impact of change on the organization or on the establishment that you are part of as well. We'll also look into how you could communicate the plan for change to the various stakeholders, as I just mentioned, not only identifying what the impact is going to be, but how this could be communicated to all the relevant stakeholders, so that you could gain approval if you are directly involved in the change management initiative, or if you are proposing it yourself as a leader, as a manager. Again, here, this is the very first stage of the Lewis model, right? This is the unfreeze stage. So all these steps that I am sharing with you at the moment, these are showing you how you can practically apply one of the models which we are going to cover during this unit. And then step 4 is actually the implementation stage, which is part 2 of the Lewis model, which is the actual implementing change part, where you are identifying who is taking part in the change management initiative, how the process is going to be managed, and of course all the resources that are going to be required and need to be put in place as well. And of course, monitoring change, that is something that is quite important as well. And during this unit, having covered different models and having selected which model you particularly would like to work with for your assignments, then we are also going to talk about how to actually monitor the change process. The biggest benefit of this unit is that we are not only going to be covering theoretical models of implementing change and driving change, but also putting those into practice in real life, so that you are fully prepared for your next role, for the next level of your career, and you know how to be champions of change and really lead those initiatives as well. Here we're going to be talking about how you could overcome resistance to change, because in my own experience as someone who has not only been part of a change management initiative, but as someone who has led a change management initiative in one of the banks here in the UK, I can talk from experience about overcoming resistance. And when we talk about resistance, I mean the resistance of the employees, because not everyone is open to change, not everyone is open to embracing new ways of working, especially when that involves quickly learning new skills in order to be able to operate in a technological way. So in my personal experience here as a consultant, as a coach and trainer in the corporate world, I can talk from experience and give you a lot of examples of how to actually overcome resistance in order to have the employees and all the stakeholders that you have identified to be part of the change management initiative to actually really embrace what you are driving forward as well. You also learn how to use SMART objectives in order to measure progress, because it is quite important to know how to work with the SMART terminology here as well. And if you have completed some of the other levels, you would already be familiar with how SMART objectives work. But even if you aren't, we are definitely going to have a summary of SMART so that you know how to implement SMART and use them to measure progress as well.